Instead of having a clear vision of who you are and where you're going, racism seeks to obscure and create confusion. Welcome back to Healing from Racism, Lessons from the Tao Te Ching. I'm Lisa Jagona, and in this video, I'm going to be looking at verse 10. Let's go. All right, before I do, I want to remind you of a line from verse 3, which said, "If you overesteem great men, people become powerless." And I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we read verse 10, which begins, "Can you coax your mind from its wandering and keep to the original oneness? Can you let your body become supple as a newborn child's? Can you cleanse your inner vision until you see nothing but the light? Can you love people and lead them without imposing your will?" I'll pause here and say that racism is a distraction. Its purpose is to make you forget yourself, which then leads you to ignore and disregard and dismiss important parts of yourself and important parts within others. It's a devaluing of precious parts of self and of others. So in that first line, can you coax your mind from its wandering? Racism is something that makes your mind wander. Instead of having a clear vision of who you are and where you're going, racism seeks to obscure and create confusion until there's only darkness. You're pulled into the negative aspects of yourself, and so you can only see darkness. This wavering of the mind that happens as a result of racism is the devaluing that causes you to question your own self-worth and the worthiness of others. The thing that promotes an obsessive comparing and competing that causes you to externalize your sense of worthiness to seeking approval from other people. And by so doing, you become their prisoner. These things blind your inner vision. Hence the need to cleanse your inner vision to see the light. Now, I want to remind you too that in verse 1 of the Tao Te Ching, it said, "Darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding." And so darkness isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it is the pathway. So take heart. Looking at how racialized narratives show up in your being and having conversations about racism is difficult. But it is through the darkness that we can attain the type of healing and understanding that liberates us. It is in the darkness that you're able to see the full magnificence of the light. So continuing on, the Tao begins to talk about leadership of others. Can you love people and lead them without imposing your will? Ultimately, racism is about power. Its aim is to monopolize power into the hands of a few beings who somehow position themselves as superior. But this is not a pure power. It is not a power that is in harmony with the Tao. It is a power rooted in deprivation, in fear, in feelings of inadequacy. And under this power structure, you are not enough, you can never be enough, and nothing can ever be enough. And the only way to lead under such a deprivation paradigm is to impose your will upon other people. When I say that you are up here and the only way to sustain yourself is to kick down, I don't mean just a physical thing, like a foot on the neck. Instead, it shows up as a battle of wills. It's imposing your will and insisting and assuming that you know. And it's an attitude that this is the way or the highway. And it's an unwillingness to engage people in a way that honors the wisdom that they bring into these conversations and these experiences and solution finding. One of the things that's so difficult in corporate spaces for Black people, particularly Black women, is an inclination, an attitude, a tendency to not want to see or have Black women as leaders. There's an inclination that is arising from sexism generally, but sexism combined with racism. In our interactions day to day, the monopolization of power often looks like imposing your will upon loved ones, upon coworkers, upon subordinates. You think you have to impose your will upon these people. And it feels like and it seems like you perceive them to be somehow less than you and not equal in some sort of standing. And consequently, you disregard people's agencies under that paradigm. And you cannot trust anyone who you seek to control. Micromanaging behavior, I believe, arises from this inability to trust whoever it is that you're micromanaging. Underpinning that unwillingness or lack of ability to trust in other people to contribute themselves to the cause is a much deeper distrust of self. It's a distrust in your own ability to lead effectively that creates these micromanaging behaviors that we see. So that's the first part of verse 10. Continuing on, the Tao reminds us how to do without overstepping. Giving birth and nourishing, having without possessing, acting with no expectations, leading and not trying to control. This is the supreme virtue. So giving birth and nourishing, having, acting, leading, and not trying to control. All these things speak to doing the work, doing your work, and then releasing it, recognizing where your control ends. Giving birth and nourishing, having without possessing, acting without expectations. Once you act, you cannot be sure what's going to happen. Because once you do something, the effect is really not within your control. Some people are going to get offended. Some people are going to act however they're going to act. But that doesn't negate your ability to act. So acting without expectation, you release yourself. Your job, living in alignment with the Tao, is to act. Period. And this healing work is cleansing your vision of yourself first and foremost. It's healing the inflictions of racism upon your spirit to remember that your power as a creative agent is life-giving. It's expansive. It's releasing the need to control and possess, which is emblematic of the power-grabbing paradigm within which racism exists, because doing so creates constrictions and limits on the infinite. When you possess, you become preoccupied with maintaining ownership. When you expect, you become anxious because what if it doesn't work? The possibility of being disappointed, should it not work, gives you a false justification for trying to impose your control upon others. These things create a container that imposes limitations on the infinite possibilities. The Tao is expansive, and so is our capability. I believe that we can learn to live more expansively and learn how to embrace the complexity of this life without needing to feel like we need to control everything. But that doesn't involve us denying what happened. In fact, it requires us to dig deeper, to understand what we have done, how we have responded to similar situations in the past, and consider how that informs the steps and cautions we must take in this moment. How have we done it right in the past? But what have we done wrong? And in making our decisions today, moving forward, how do we make sure that we're not further constraining ourselves and blocking ourselves into arbitrary boxes that create needless tensions and limits that lead to wars because everyone is trying to cling to what they already have? And with that, I will wrap up verse 10. I welcome your reflections and thoughts. You can use the comments below, or if you want, there's a form that you can fill out that allows you to send me a message directly. If you have my text message, send me a text message or email that way. And until next time, where I'll be looking at verse 11, be well.